Hello friends, I'm FIDE instructor Atul Dahale and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to see a modern day classic played by the current world chess champion Magnus Carlsen. Yes, in the ongoing Norway Chess Classic tournament in the 8th round, Magnus Carlsen was going to play against his countryman, that is the Norwegian super kid, you can say, Aryan Tari. Yes, in this round Aryan Tari opted for the Ruy Lopez opening, but after the opening phase he made a slight mistake. He exchanged couple of pieces and he ended up into bad bishop against Magnus Carlsen's good knight, and then Magnus Carlsen showed why he is the best player in the world when it comes to playing the classical type of position. Yes, in this game Magnus Carlsen showed the superiority of his knight. So without further delay, let's get started with this game and understand how he outplayed his super talented young opponent. Well, the game started with e4. Magnus Carlsen was white. Aryan Tari, who was black, played e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. Ruy Lopez opening, it is very famous opening, a6, bishop a4, knight f6, castle, and now bishop e7. There is no other opening which we are going to discuss here. Well, the game could have been continued with rook e1, and this is the classical way where you play the open Ruy Lopez. You can say b5, bishop b3, d6, c3, castle, and the ideas like h3 followed by d4, black plays knight a5, bishop c2, and then c5. The game will continue. Okay, there are other alternatives also, but here Magnus Carlsen opted for something which is very stable. He plays d3, the closed version of the Ruy Lopez. After this, black played b5, bishop b3, d6, and now he plays a4. A very important move, because as you have closed the center, you need to play on one side of the board, and it is a good decision to play on the queen side first and neutralize this pawn structure. After this, black plays bishop d7, which is a good idea. Another idea was to play bishop g4 and pin the knight, but bishop d7 is also good enough, because at some point you might need to support the pawn on b5. So bishop d7 is played. c3, obviously if the knight a5 this kind of move is played, then you need to get bishop c2. This is also one of the moves, but he opted for bishop a2. Another idea of c3 is to get ready to play d4 move and grab the center. Okay, here black seizes his opponent opportunity, and he plays c5, controlling the d4 square. After this, Magnus Carlsen played bishop g5. Okay, why is he playing this move? We will come to know very soon. After the castling was played and knight d2. Both the sides have developed the position in a very simplistic way. They have developed, you can see white has developed the knights plus bishop, and this bishop is eyeing towards black's king. Okay, but this knight on a5 looks a little bit odd to me. Okay, now black plays rook b8, trying to get some counterplay in the position, because the idea is to capture on a4 and pressurize on b2 square. Well, you can definitely play queen c2 or this kind of moves, but that will just give your opponent a lot of play on the b file. So Carlsen understands this thing, and he goes for 8 takes b5, 8 takes b5, and he calmly plays rook e1 in this position, just defending the pawn on e4. And also a very standard idea is going to be played, that is knight f1 followed by knight e3 or knight g3, and going for the holes, you can say, that is the d5 and f5 square. This is a very standard idea which you should remember while playing the Ruy Lopez opening. Now Aryan Tari played b4 move. Okay, this is a completely normal move, but after playing b4 move, there is a square which is vacated now, that is the c4 square. I always see this kind of things, that whenever we push any pawn move, okay, when any pawn, then it creates some kind of a weakness, because earlier when the pawn was on b5 square, it was controlling the important c4 square. Once you push the pawn, okay, once you push the pawn to b4 square, the c4 square is no longer protected by the pawn which was there on b5. And that's the reason I always tell my students also, that whenever you are going to push the pawn, think about it, because the pawns cannot really come back, and you need to think before pushing the pawn forward. Okay, so Carlsen just occupies that square with knight c4, knight takes c4, and now bishop takes c4. You can see that the bishop is also getting a little bit activated on this diagonal. Earlier on a2 it was not doing that good job, but on c4 it has more space now. Okay, Okay, now b takes c3 was played, b takes c3, and now black plays queen c7. Well, another idea to just neutralize the bishop on c4 was to play bishop e6, but here knight d2 is something which I would like to play. Another idea is to just capture the bishop on e6 and going for the this kind of endgame where you will be having a good knight against the little bit cramped bishop, you can say. But if you go for knight d2, then the d5 move is coming and the bishop will get some air to play. Okay, that's why bishop into e6 is not that cool idea. So I will opt for knight to d2 and I will just wait for black to capture on c4, and then if this position happens, it will be similar to the game, so we will discuss it after some time. Queen c7 was played by Aryan Tari, connecting the rooks here, and Magnus Carlsen also does the same thing. He plays queen c2 in this position. Now Aryan Tari made a very slight mistake. He plays bishop b5 in this position, which was not actually necessary. If you see the position that black is having two bishops, white is also having two bishops, but the bishop on e7 is cramped because of his own pawns, and the only active bishop, or you can say the bishop which was having more scope, was the light square bishop, and it is a little bit slight mistake to exchange that bishop. Okay, we can understand that he wants to exchange the bishop with the good bishop which is sitting on the c4 square, but this is not something which is good in this position, particularly because of the sequence which Magnus Carlsen played. After bishop takes b5, rook takes b5, he immediately understood that the square on d5 is now weak, and the only person or the only piece which is protecting that square is the knight on f6. So he exchanges knight, and now the game is converted into bad bishop against the good knight. All white needs to do is go to the d5 square with the knight, and the knight will be placed on a beautiful square and it will just dominate black's pieces. So the journey continues now. Knight d2, black tried to play queen c6. Okay, now he plays queen a4. Obviously the idea of queen c6 was to take d5, but he plays queen a4, a very cunning idea, because if you go for d5 it will be a mistake because the rook on b5 will be hanging. So here he plays rook f b8. Okay, no problem. Knight goes to c4 square. Ultimately we want to reach to d5 square, that is our deal, nothing else really matters in the position. Bishop e7 is played, and now he plays a simple move, that is g3. Why is he playing this move? Well, to restrict the bishop more, and also he is creating his own space for his king. This is a very ideal strategy in this kind of position. Black Aryan Tari plays queen c8, trying to come on the queen side. So Magnus also understood this thing. He plays queen d1, taking the queen back. This is also very important thing we should remember. No matter what is your concrete plan in the position, you should also see your opponent's plans and you should try to restrict his plans. Okay, so queen d1 is according to that thing. g6 is played, and now he calmly plays king g2, covering the h3 square. Okay, now bishop f8. Well, the bishop is not really having any good squares, but it can defend the pawn on d6, which is the backward pawn and also the backbone of the pawn center, or you can the pawn structure which is there from the black side. So white grabs his pieces and puts the pieces on the king side. It is very important, wherever you want to attack you need to bring your pieces. So queen f3 is played, and now rook b3. Well, he is attacking the c3 pawn, so he calmly defends with rook c1, then queen e6, and now he gets to the 7th rank. This is a very ideal square for the rook. Always remember, rook belongs to open files, and especially if you can get it on the 7th rank, then this will be a great thing for you. Okay, always remember that thing. Rook 8 b7, and he just exchanged the rook, because more you exchange in this position, more will be beneficial for white, because as I said, this game will be decided just because of this bishop's position and knight superiority. Okay, so rook a1, grabbing the open file. This is a very ideal case. And now here, if you go for the pawn on c3, we don't really need to capture the protect the pawn on c3. We can simply go for rook a8 if he captures the pawn, and now we will calmly go to b6, followed by we'll go to the d5 square. And although white might be one pawn down, but his knight will dominate the position, and slowly and gradually white can push his pawn and black's king will be in trouble. Okay, did not happen in the game. Here he understood that the g4 is something which white would like to play, so he plays h5. Now I will tell you that when you get a good position on one side of the board, okay, then just one weakness will not really help you to win the game. You need to create a second front. This is very so here you can see that king g7 is played and Magnus Carlsen goes for knight e3. Obviously we want to go to d5 square, and this is the clear cut case of the color strategy. Okay, now here white will be dominating on the light square because black is having the dark square bishop, so he goes for knight e3. Rook c7 is played, knight d5. Finally the knight lands on the important square, that is the d5 square. Rook c8 is played. This is a mistake. Okay, now rook lands on the 7th rank, and okay, we are pressurizing on f7 pawn also with our queen and rook, and the queen on e6 is really miserably placed in this position. Okay, black plays rook b8 trying to get some counterplay in this position, and now he plays h3. This is called as the creating the second weakness in your opponent's camp. Once you get the good position on one side of the board, you should try to create weaknesses, or you should try to create your own chances on the other side of the board. As white has dominated on the queen side, especially in the center also the knight is very beautifully placed, he creates his own chances on the king side. So rook d8 is played, he pushes his pawn to g4 square, h takes g4, h takes g4. Obviously white wants to play something like g5 followed by queen g3, queen h4, queen h6, and the king will be in big trouble because the knight will also be having a very beautiful square on f6. Here he plays rook d7 trying to just exchange the rook. Magnus Carlsen doesn't go for the exchange, he plays rook 8 in this position, and now f6. Well, after f6 g5 is played. Obviously we want to get the f6 square for our knight. Here you cannot really capture the pawn because queen takes f8 is just going to a check and mate after this, so we cannot capture there. So he plays f5, but I will tell you this position is already lost for black. All you need to do is like just bring your queen on the h file and the game will be over. So the game finishes very quickly after queen h3, rook f7 is played, and now here Magnus Carlsen played one amazing move. He is always ready to see the tactics in the position, and the next move which he played really surprised me. Okay, so I'll tell you, if you have not seen this position earlier, pause for a while and think about this move. Okay, I hope you thought about the move, and the rook is coming on the e8 square. This is an amazing move. He is sacrificing his rook, queen takes e8, and now he plays queen h6 check. After king g8 move, queen g6 check, king h8. Obviously we cannot play bishop g7 move, then also we'll play knight f6. If he captures here, then queen takes e8, and this position is definitely winning for us. Okay, there is no doubt about it. And in the game king h8 was played, and after knight f6 the queen is being attacked by the knight, plus the threat of queen g8 checkmate is there, and black cannot really save the game. That's why he resigned in this game. I hope you enjoyed the analysis which we did in this game, and if you like the analysis, do subscribe to my channel and don't forget to like the video. Till then, we'll meet with something very interesting in the next video. Till then, goodbye and take care.